Welcome to the space where knowledge meets the action. Welcome to the Empowerment Show, where we break down the barriers, helping you grow. Financial literacy, speaking truth to the power. Real conversation, changing lives by the hour. We inspire to change, here we challenge the status quo. Sharing tools for building wealth, watching your seeds grow. Empower you to take control of your future. No more living in the past. We're the authors of the suture. Get ready, get set, let the movement begin. Because empowerment starts now. Let the light in.
All right. It's Tuesday, June 16th. You know, for you guys who don't know, today is Tupac's birthday. So I'd just like to give a shout out for that, Tupac. I really enjoyed his music. He was a hell of an entertainer. All right, hell of a rapper. All right, my name is Kendall Stevnson, and it's Stevnson and Yates. Yates will be along in just a second. We like to open the show, as we always do, by looking at something to be grateful for. Well, I'm going to tell you something. I went to a Juneteenth festival this weekend. I wasn't able to stay, but I saw something that really made me feel good, and I feel grateful for it. I get an opportunity to work with a brother who's actually one of the pillars of the community, and he was shown that this weekend. So I'm going to introduce him. His name is Ronald Yates. Boom. What's happening, Ron? How you feeling today?
I'm good, brother.
Hotep, man. It was nice to see you get that award. That appreciation, you know, that community appreciation means a lot.
It really does. It means a whole lot.
Yeah. I wish we could do a little bit more for the community and maybe start bringing some of these crazy people together. You know, I was having a conversation with I'll say her name, Linda Zach, and we were trying to discuss some of the problems that we're having in politics. Like why didn't people vote for Kamala Harris? Well, we already know that was systemic, and there were other issues, and she was actually the better candidate if you look on paper. But there was a reason why people didn't vote for her. There was a lot of propaganda that was put out, as usual. Yeah, people have a way of utilizing the moral compass in their favor,
or lack thereof.
Yeah. We were having a discussion. We were talking about the transsexuals and how they politicize that. And I had a reminder, you know, I remember growing up in the projects, man. I think every other family has somebody gay or what did they call them back then? The drag queens is what they call them back then. And nobody really gave a damn. But they politicized it and they made it more than what it is. And I really just didn't like that. But her issue was, how are we going to get young people out to vote? You know, whether they vote Democrat or Republican, that really doesn't matter. But the issue is that they really need to understand that they got to hang on to these rights and they got to use these rights, because if they don't, they will lose them. And when they lose them, then everybody's going to complain and they're going to cry, blah, 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 blah. It's going to be a whole big issue because they're not allowed to, let's say, vote. So that's what you and I, we went to that meeting, and I was hoping that some of that would have come out in the meeting on how we're going to engage the youth within our community.
Well, I think the way to engage the youth is to tell them the truth. And the truth is that the future looks very bleak for them. And it is, in many respects, our fault and the generations before us. We didn't fight hard enough. We surrendered, right? Like we've given up certain things in exchange for a bigger paycheck, right? Things that we deemed important 30 years ago don't have the same importance today. So for these young people, if you tell them the truth, if you tell them you have to fight like hell for your survival, for the survival of this planet, then that's a way of engaging them, by just telling them the truth. But instead, we take our children and we don't give them the necessary tools. I work at a school district, and one of the things I noticed is that this generation, particularly, it is a generation of technology. You give a little child a cell phone, and they can figure out how to operate that cell phone. To
Absolutely.
us, to these kids, a cell phone is nothing, but to people of our generation and the generation before, this is a major leap in technology. Well, these same children that can figure out an advanced piece of equipment, a computer, like a cell phone, they go to school, and one of the first things they tell them to do is, now, little Johnny, we're going to finger paint. So little Johnny, little Sally, whose synapses are bursting, right, who can absorb so much information, is purposely being slowed down, right? Slowed down, to the point that we're only going to teach you just enough to get you to pass a standardized test. We're not preparing you for the realities, the economic realities, the employment realities of the future. So we have to let the kids know that, these young people know that, and know that you have to fight because your future depends on it.
Well, when you utilize the term fight, we got to kind of elaborate a little bit on that. We were talking about it one time about education and the importance of education and how important it is. Well, you were telling me just now about the school system and how the inadequacies of the school system. A lot of that is meant to be. It was made to be that way. It's being destroyed on purpose because they want us to be sheep. I tell you, education makes us dangerous. The more educated we are, the more dangerous we are as a people. So you were talking about what the children learn in school. They learn outside the school. They learn all of this technology, and then once they get in school, they're not taught. They're not. Well, the state. Well, I'm not going to say the state, but the STEM programs. What happened to the STEM programs? Wasn't that a way that we were supposed to introduce children to technology?
There are STEM programs, but unfortunately, the vast majority of the children will not qualify to get into entrance into the STEM program. In order to gain entry to the STEM program, you have to have uh, a pretty good understanding of things like mathematics, right? Um, Algebra, pre-algebra, things like that, things that they can build upon. And a lot of children in the school systems right now, the various school systems across the country, are not taught those things. I find that things that I learned in third and fourth grade are now being put into play in junior high school, right? There's so much information that we knew instinctively because it was drilled into us. We had to bring a newspaper to school. We had to know who was the president, the vice president. We had to know who the governor of our state was, who our representatives were, who the mayor was. And a lot of these kids in junior high school, because I'm in an intermediate school, you ask them who's the governor of Pennsylvania, they have no clue. You ask them who the vice president of the United States is, again, they have no clue. So these children are being groomed to do what? And the other danger for them is AI technology. When AI is fully implemented, what you're going to have is jobs done by robots that don't take vacations, that don't need a break to go to the bathroom, to have lunch. The productivity will far exceed what a human being can do. So there is so many dangers, lying ahead for our young people. And unless they're made aware of that, they're going to go through life thinking, well, I'll graduate high school and I'll get a job somewhere. But where's that somewhere? And what will you do?
Well, I guess, this is what I could say to that. You have to evolve as technology evolves. Now, we talked about the STEM programs. As you know, I'm an educator, educational technology specialist. And one of the things that we did, and I'm talking, 20 years ago, we were actually teaching young kids how to build little robots. They call them M-bots, and we started teaching them how to program and we're talking kids and just getting out, just starting to learn how to read and write, that we were actually teaching them. And these kids were really excelling. They were very, very technically advanced. They can pick things up very quickly. Um, as far as everything else is concerned, it's about the government, who's in charge, where our resources are being sent. I mean, look, the other choice that they have for us are schools that most of the kids can't afford or can't get into, which are what are the charter schools. We talk about how difficult it is to get into a STEM programs. How difficult is it to get into a charter school? Very difficult, right? And then you gotta have you gotta have a, what do they call it? You gotta be in a lottery or whatever. But I think they pick and choose who they want. But what happens to the kids that don't make it into those charter schools? They just lay to the wayside because there's not going to be an education system for them to receive an education. What happens what happens then?
Well, yeah, that's the problem, right? Therein lies the problem, that we're not teaching our children, in an advanced level, to prepare them for the challenges of the 21st and into the 21st century and beyond, right? And for us as Americans in general, not just the children, we have a very serious problem. And I'm talking about in terms of technology. So I was watching, it may have been the nightly news. In fact, I think it was a few weeks back. And there was a display, a display of AI in China. And China has basically, I guess you might say, cornered the market on advanced AI technology. China now has robots or AI that can do, domestic work in the house.
Mm-hmm.
They also have robots that can do, martial arts moves. What if they program those robots to perform military functions? What if they have a military application?
I'm sure they're on their way there, man.
Oh, I'm sure they're there already.
I'm
I'm
pretty
sure they're there already, right?
Yeah, but it's funny. Remember when we were kids and we used to come home from school, we watched cartoons and whatnot, and we sat back and we watched the Jetsons. And it seems like all of the technology that was back then that you saw in the cartoon, all of it's coming to fruition right now. Everything that was there. So I'm saying to say that this technology, it just wasn't thought of now in this time period. This technology's been around for quite a while. And this is how we're utilizing it. But what happens to, again, with the kids when they reach a certain age, they want to go out to get a job. Hey, there's no job to get. And then they want us to be uneducated. So even at that point, will we end up homeless somewhere?
Well, yeah. And right now, there are many people on the unemployment lines, right? It's just amazing to me how when Trump was elected to his second term and he bought on Elon Musk and they created Doge, so many federal employees were let go. And yet you look at the unemployment numbers, they somehow managed to stay low. So I think that people are either undercounted or simply not counted at all, right? To keep the unemployment numbers relatively stable. But there are so many people right now that cannot find jobs.
Yeah,
What
but
happens when these kids
it
graduate high school and college?
right? But wasn't it? I thought it came out that some time ago that the person that was actually in charge of doing the counting, if you want to say, got fired. That Trump fired him. And anything that came up that was a negative towards Trump, if you want to say, or towards what do you call it, unemployment, he fired those people. And the people that he fired, right? And the people that he fired from the federal government were predominantly people that look like you and I. And they started that nonsense with the DEI programs and the affirmative action nonsense. They started talking that nonsense, you know. So those are the people that I mean, we're at the highest unemployment rate ever as far as Black people are concerned, you know.
Well, so that kind of puts an asterisk on what I've been saying. So for these young people that are going to graduate high school, college, and or just recently graduated high school and college, they come out into the job market and they find the job market is extremely limited, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're only hiring for certain sectors of the economy. And for the most part, most people are going to be pushed into the service sector, where they're going to receive low wages, minimal, if any, benefits, right?
Mm-hmm.
The other jobs that they might pursue would, of course, be medicine, nursing, being a doctor, or some form of, tech.
Oh, I thought you froze up on me, brother. Well, he was saying that in at other forms of medical field that people may want to get involved with, which would be working as a technician or something along that line. But today, what we were discussing, the prelude into our unemployment and where are we going with our unemployment rate. We discussed already that us as African Americans, we're at the highest unemployment rate, and we want to know what's going to go on with our children in the future. I would love to know what's going to go on with our children in the future. And the way it seems like, we're going to have a rough road ahead. And I think that's done by design. I think that they want to make a working class, have that little class that they can put out in the fields. This is what they're doing, I guess, with the incarceration, because that's one of our biggest business here is incarcerating people so that we can utilize them for labor, free labor. So maybe that's what they want. They want some kids to move off in one direction, that like say management, and then they want another sector to move off into another direction. But they're making this determination who's going to be able to do what based on the education that they may have. Okay, Ron is back, so let me bring him back in. There you go, brother. Yeah, you faded off for a minute. I thought I'd
I
take
thought
you out
that
and
was
bring you
you that
back.
went out.
Nah, I'm good. I was here.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I just saw that your picture went out.
Yeah, you froze. Okay, it's
Oh,
all
okay,
good.
okay.
But we here now, and you were telling me about as I was telling the viewing audience that I was talking about our children and where we're headed that in our future, and it just seems that the way that the society and the way things would be set up is this got to do with being a what do you call it, capitalist society? Because it seems in order for a capitalist society to work, you got to have the rich, but you got to have the poor too in order for things to work out. Everybody can't be on an even plane, and you can't have a little bit at the top and well, now this way it's going to get a little bit at the top but a lot at the bottom, and the AI is taking over what's ever in between in the middle.
Well, in terms of education, what's interesting is the American educational system is based on the German system. Our system was created by a man by the name of Hegel, and our system is known as the Hegelian dialectic. And you have to understand that for probably until the 19th century, education was a privilege of the wealthy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people talk about Christianity spreading throughout Europe. Well, you have to understand when Christianity was spreading through Europe, most of the people were illiterate, couldn't read or write. So the priests would tell them what was in the Bible, just like they told us on the plantations. They told the masses what was in the Bible because they couldn't read it for themselves. It wasn't until probably the 19th century that governments decided that they had to offer some form of education. Prior to that, they didn't see a need to, simply because all you're going to do is be cannon fodder for the royal family, or you're going to be a peasant and you're going to pay taxes to the royal family. How much education did you need for that? Well, as the world economies began to change, and they needed to establish a middle class, they needed to have people with a slightly higher degree of understanding. It takes a little thinking, say, to operate a train, right? A locomotive, to do construction, to do drafting and architecture. It takes some thinking. So they had to establish a middle class. Well, now the economy and the thinking has shifted again, and the middle class has basically been obliterated, right? Under the Reagan administration and subsequent administrations, what happened was the greatest redistribution of wealth from the poorest to the wealthiest. So now you have Elon Musk, who's now a trillionaire, right? How did that happen? People in this country are getting progressively poorer, but the top 1%, well, their coffers are literally bursting. And
let me ask you something. We talk about this money situation and who got it and who don't got it and where's it being spent. I'm very happy for the New York Knicks. I tell you, we waited a long time to see them achieve it and reach the goal to become champions. How much was the seat for those tickets?
I think the cheapest seats were $8,000 to $10,000 per seat. And that's in the nosebleed section, right? Sections that, 40, 50 years ago were $10 are now $8,000 to $10,000 to go to watch a basketball game.
Right. That was my point. There had to be at least maybe close to $1 billion that had to be spent on just people going to see it in the stadium. And then how much money was spent on media? How much money was spent on the parties, the watch parties? I mean, you're talking billions of dollars, but yet we can't find a nickel or a dime to feed the poor. We can't find anything to help out SNAP programs, or we can't find anything to help the Medicare or Social Security or any of the other needs that we have. But we can find money to take our ass down to a basketball game. We can find thousands of dollars for that. And not to criticize anybody, but it's the truth. You say the 1%, so I guess the stadium must have been filled with the 1%, because I can't afford to buy no $10,000 ticket. How about you, brother?
Neither can I. And this is what I was saying about the thinking of the wealthiest among us has shifted. Years ago, they would invest money into education, right? They would invest money into infrastructure, into different communities. Now, it is just the opposite. The money's being siphoned out of the communities, and how they're doing it, they're underfunding things like education. They're underfunding healthcare. They're cutting SNAP. They want to cut Social Security. They've cut Medicaid. They've cut Medicare. So the money's being siphoned out of the community into the pockets of the wealthiest. That's right.
That's right.
And the problem is that for us, average American people, we're so busy arguing over who's a real conservative and who's a Democrat and who's left and who's right, that while we're arguing, it's like they're turning us upside down and shaking every dollar out of your pocket. And every now and then they'll tell us, "Oh, but watch what this guy's doing because they're sticking across the border," right? So while you're looking the other way, they're digging in your pocket again, right? I was talking to somebody earlier today, and I said, I remember my parents would go to a store and buy a black and white TV, come home, which kills generations have never seen a black and white TV, but they would come home, set that TV on a TV stand, plug it in, take a pair of rabbit ears, connect it to the TV, turn it on. And in New York City, you got channel 2, 4, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, and the 2 UHF channels, which were the Spanish channels.
About 47. Don't forget 47.
The Spanish channels.
Right.
Here's the thing. You paid one bill to watch TV, electricity. Now, for that same TV, you have to pay your electric bill. You have to have Wi-Fi, and you have to have cable or Fire Stick or some other device to bring the signal into your home. So before you had one TV, one bill. Now you have one TV, 3 bills to watch one TV.
It's funny.
The idea.
My mother used to call a television. I remember when it first came out, like back in the '60s and going into the '70s, when you actually could afford to put one in the living room, little 13 inches. Remember that?
Oh,
With the
sure.
little stupid rabbit ears. My mother called it an idiot box. She said the longer
Hmm.
you watch it, the dumber you get. So is that's
Hmm.
a scenario that we got here going on with technology? The more technology that we receive, the dumber we get.
Well, you know what? George Orwell wrote in the book 1948, he talked about us looking at these giant screens to receive propaganda. And
Mm-hmm.
now we have people with 80-inch TVs mounted to their wall, and they sit there glued to the TV. And I think you see that when you talk to people, especially as it relates to politics and the hyperpartisanship in this country. You know, I remember before I retired, the TV would be on in the break room, and there was the control center where there was always be a TV on, and of course, it would invariably be on Fox News. Invariably, it would be they'd be watching Fox News all day
All
long.
day long. Yep.
Now, how do you hypnotize somebody? By the power of suggestion and by the power of repeating the same thing
Over and
over and
over again.
over and over. So you're
Mm-hmm.
watching Fox News, right? And the same information is being repeated to you over and over and over. So
Well,
by the time
the same lie is being repeated to you over and over
right.
again. Right.
So by the
Mm-hmm.
time your shift is over, you are now going to repeat verbatim exactly the information that was fed into your subconscious.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah,
You
what's
know,
happening is,
in computers, we call that garbage in and garbage out. So what we got going on, and pretty much with this administration and the way our society is going, we have a lot of garbage going in, which was going to do what? Garbage coming out.
mhm.
Did you see this
Now,
guy down in Washington, D.C.? I'm sorry to cut you off, but you see what he's
mhm.
doing in Washington, D.C.? He's putting up
You
all these
talking
little
about,
Trump with the statues that they put up and
mhm.
renaming it, putting the names on places, the streets, all of this stuff. Even with this ball that he's trying to build, that he lied to us, and they lied right out of the box to us about that. I don't mean to change and switch hats, but since I got on that pissed me off. So they come out. The first thing they said was, "Well, that donators and we got people that are going to pay for this." I think that whole thing with that shooting, whatever, trying to go after I think that was just a way for them to get the taxpayers to say we need to secure our president, so we're going to pay for that. We're going to pay for that ball.
Well,
That ball.
absolutely that was the goal, and it worked. And you have to keep in mind, right, that Trump works in a world of distractions, right? Um, the more he can keep you distracted, the more he can get out of you, right? I think he just had this UFC event on the grounds of the White House on Sunday. That was an event that raised funds for him, right? His companies, his family, right? Um, it is corruption at the highest level, right? But
Mm-hmm.
I think what's really important right now is today Trump announced that an agreement had been reached between the U.S. and Iran. Trump was desperate for this agreement. Now I know he's saying, well, the Iranians are dying for a deal. No, they weren't. The
Nope, they
Iranians
sure
won.
weren't.
The Iranians won this war. The Iranians proved the point that they can outlast the United States and Israel. And the problem here is Israel is not happy with this agreement. Israel wanted this war to continue. So, I'm going to say this on air. I suspect that in the coming weeks or months, there's going to be a terror attack, right? And of course, the blame will be placed on the Iranians in
Yep.
order to get this war going again. Because for Benjamin Netanyahu, or more specifically, Benjamin Milokovsky, for him, war keeps the people of Israel distracted. Benjamin Milakovsky, also known as Netanyahu, has some very serious legal troubles, both he and his wife.
Yep.
As long as the shooting continues and the people believe Israel is in danger, that only plays into the hands of Netanyahu. But if the shooting stops, if there's no war, then the people are going to revert back to the charges against Netanyahu and his wife. That's why it was so important for Trump to get reelected. Because if he didn't, Donald Trump would be sitting in prison right now.
Let me ask you a quick question. Yeah. Let me ask you a quick question. What do you think it would have been like if we had Kamala Harris became president? I know we wouldn't have all this nonsense that we have it now with the tariffs, with the war, with the oil. What do you think it would have been like?
The tariffs we would not have had, clearly, right? I mean, we had free trade with Canada. That was stupid, really stupid to tariff a country that you have free trade with. In terms of the war, now you have to understand foreign policy, particularly as it relates to the Middle East, or what's called the Middle East, that does not come from Washington. The plans for the Middle East, foreign policy, U.S. foreign policy is drawn up in Tel Aviv, right? It is Netanyahu who determines the actions undertaken by this country in the Middle East. In fact, right now, they're looking to combine joint forces together. American and Israeli forces are looking to combine. So they already have some Israeli top-ranking commanders that they're going to put into U.S. command stations, right? This is already planned. This is already planned out. So now, who's going to be moving the chess pieces? Since when do you have a foreign power giving orders to American military?
You don't.
But this is what they're looking to integrate, right? So who's pulling the strings in what's called the Middle East? Clearly, it is Benjamin Netanyahu. There was no reason for America to be involved in this war. We do not rely on foreign oil.
Nope.
We only created a mess by starting this war and allowing the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. We put so much pressure on other governments. I mean, look at poor Cuba. Not only did the Strait of Hormuz closure affect them, now the U.S.
Right? Close them
is
off.
threatening them. It's threatening them, closing them off. These people are desperate.
Yeah.
There was no need to do this, except this is what Netanyahu wanted. And Netanyahu gets what Netanyahu wants.
I'm going to tell you, man, I don't know what this world is coming to, brother, but what's the old saying, hell in a handbasket? Because that's what it feels like at times. It just feels like everybody wants to kill each other. We all there. Well, not on our level, but on the upper level. They want to, they come with all these distractions and deterrence here and then this distraction here. But in reality, they just want to kill each other off, or they want to rob each other. They want to take all of the monies that there is. I don't know how rich a person could want to be, but geez, I mean, like I said, man, I don't understand what's going on in this world. And this, not just the United States, but in this world in general. People are going crazy.
Well, what's happening is, if you think about it, right? Centuries ago, the European powers got together. They united under the banner of Christianity, Roman Catholicism. They consulted with the Pope. The Pope gave them the okay to enslave people who were not Christian. He said to these European heads of state, listen, don't fight amongst each other. Go down to the places where the non-Christians live and subjugate them, right? Well, now what you have is you have those people who have been subjugated for so long who are rising up. And I thought about something the other day. If you look at the flag of Great Britain, the flag of France, and the flag of the United States, what do they all have in common?
Red, white, and blue.
Red, white, and blue, and it's not a mistake. These were the major powers, the major players in carving up the globe. And these are the people that are clinging to power. I read something just today that Trump invited the president of Botswana to come to the White House. And the president said, no, you want to do business with me, you come to Botswana.
There you go.
That shows you the change in power, the change in perception. The U.S. no longer has the ability to dictate to other countries. The world looked at the situation in Iraq and saw that Iraq won this war. Iraq was able to outlast the powers of both the United States and Iran. And Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And they emerge now as a country to be reckoned with.
Well, and they still have the missiles, the ballistic missiles. They still have that stockpile and the drones.
Well, they just shot down a helicopter
with drones.
So how could Trump say that we obliterated their arsenal? Now, you have to go back to a year ago in June when Trump launched an attack on Iran and said he used these heavy munitions, these bunker buster bombs, to destroy Iran's nuclear stockpile, right? Their enriched uranium. He said he did that a year ago. Then 8-10 weeks ago, he goes to war with Iran to obliterate stuff you obliterated last year. Then he tells us how he's destroyed their navy, destroys their air force, degraded their army. Yet they were able to shoot down a helicopter just last week. So clearly, everything that we're being told about Iran and Iran's weaponry is a lie. Iran's budget or their ability to withstand economically is also a lie. We only get one side of the story.
Well, you know the rest of this line. How could you tell if a person if Trump is telling a lie? How can you tell?
His mouth is moving. His mouth is moving.
And what you right on. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
His mouth is moving. Yeah. So every time his mouth is moving, man, the brother, he's lying. You got to take it as that as he's lying. And they're investing monies in drones. What's his name? Eric Kushner, the son-in-law.
Jared, yeah.
Yeah, Jared. He just bought a whole bunch of drones, building drones.
Well,
military-style drones.
And here's the worst part of it. Donald Trump said he criticized the plan that Obama had drawn up with other countries, mind you. I think it's the JCPOA. They came up with a plan. They presented to Iran to prevent Iran from enriching enriched uranium to build a nuclear device. Mm-hmm. I think what happened was, as part of the agreement, Iran was given $400 million that had been frozen, their own assets. Well, now, as part of this agreement, that Trump tore up the agreement, said it was terrible. Now you went to war with Iran, and now you're trying to reestablish the same agreement that you had from 6 years ago. Now you're trying, or more than 6 years ago, from 2015. Now you're trying to renegotiate that same deal. But this time, Iran stands to get $24 billion. And he said Obama was basically a fool for giving him $400 million. Now you're giving them the money that it was assets that were frozen. Right, now you're giving them $24 billion to rebuild Iran.
But our money,
which also means to rebuild their weaponry, their arsenal, right? And this whole thing, Trump tries to say, listen, it was necessary for us to attack Iran because Iran was close to building a nuclear weapon. Now, this is after last year when you obliterated them, when you dropped these bombs and you said you set their nuclear program back generations. Well, after that, you told us, well, now we got to go to war to obliterate what we obliterated already. Well, here's the thing, right? you know, for Trump, now you put yourself in a situation where you're going to pay these people to rebuild their weaponry, rebuild their cities, right? And what did America get out of this? What did America get from our meetings, these high-level meetings between him and Xi Jinping in China? What did America get? Trump is traveling the world and coming home empty-handed. He's telling us that there's $18 trillion of foreign investment. Where the hell is it?
You mean in his
factories are closing down.
That's right.
Middle size and family-owned businesses are closing up. They can no longer compete. Tariffs too high, gas price too high, fertilizer too high.
Yeah, fertilizer. Jeez, I forgot about
farms. I think I forget the number, but literally thousands of farmers have now lost their farms.
Yep.
So
and a lot of them voted for Trump. You know that,
yes,
right? A lot of those
did.
farmers, and this is why I asked, what kind of scenario you think that we would have had under a Harris?
Well,
President Harris.
Well, I'm just not sure about the war. You know what I mean? Because the war, that's not determined in Washington. That is Netanyahu. Netanyahu pulls the strings, right? With Trump, I think it's a little bit easier because what I honestly believe is that there was a lot of Epstein information that is in the possession of Benjamin Netanyahu and Israeli Mossad and other agencies. And I think that Trump is being led around by the nose by Netanyahu out of fear that Netanyahu will release this information. Some of it, I'm sure, is very damning to the president. I think that Trump right now has been dodging the proverbial raindrops with his distractions. But it is clear that the Epstein file conversation is going to come back to haunt him. The Republican members of Congress that Trump campaigned against, well, you have to understand they're going to be there till the next Congress is seated.
Mm-hmm.
And in that time, that gives them time to get other Republicans on board who are looking at their example saying, you see what Trump did to me? In fact, John Cornyn of Texas, he wanted to put Trump's face on money.
$250 bill.
And Trump still went against him, drove him out of office. So the other Republicans are looking at the example. Trump wants loyalty, but Trump does not give loyalty.
Now,
so he drove John Cornyn out of office and several others who supported him.
But did you hear what I said? $250 bill.
Yes.
That's what he wants.
Which violates the law in this country. You cannot have the face of a living person on money, on currency. But they didn't care. John Cornyn wanted to curry favor with Trump. So he put this forward, right? And just like Mike Johnson saw to it that Trump got an award and said, nobody's more deserving than you, Mr. President. For what? Of all of the promises that President Trump made when he was running for office, how many has he carried through upon? None. And
if you ask those MAGA people, and a lot of those real Trump supporters, those diehard Trumps, they swear by Trump.
Well, they do.
Yeah,
but they can't defend him. So what they'll say is, "What about Biden?"
What about Biden?
See, so my question is, okay, if everything Biden did was wrong, does that mean everything Trump is doing is right? It makes absolutely no sense. There's no logic to it at all, right?
And no truth.
But the fact that you supported him, there's no logic to that. This is the same man that led an insurrection against his own government. This is the same man that talks about cheating in elections. that's talking about California and their election counting procedures. Yet he's the guy caught on telephone talking to Raffensperger in Georgia saying, hey, I need so many votes. I just need you to find me 13,000 votes or whatever it is. And he says there was nothing wrong with that phone call.
Yeah. It was a perfectly good. It was a good phone call. Get out of here.
Right. It was a perfect phone call. It was an illegal phone call. You're asking someone to find votes. What do you mean find votes? You don't find votes. People either voted for you or they did. You don't find additional votes. That's called manipulating the ballot. That's what that is. But now Trump is talking about the situation in California, why it's taking so long. So there's no cheating, what he's putting out there and the other Republicans are putting out there is, well, there's the opportunity to cheat. Well, what about the fact that right now they're demanding more forms of identification to vote? Who's doing that? What about the fact that we're close to a poll tax literacy test in order to vote? Who's doing that? Right?
You better get your jelly beans out.
The other day, the candidate from Maine, Plattner. Now, Plattner's not the perfect candidate by any stretch of the imagination. They say that, he may have a swastika tattoo on his chest, that there have been some sexual improprieties during his marriage, right? Typically, the sort of candidate that the Democratic Party would instantly reject. But the voters of Maine had made it clear, this is our guy. Trump doing a press release said this is one of the worst individuals ever, and they are making excuses for him. Donald Trump, 34 felony convictions, adjudicated rapist, robbed from children's charities, robbed from his own businesses, would not rent apartments or homes to Black people. The list goes on and on and on. Trump is saying that Graham Plattner is the worst person on the planet. Trump is saying this.
Man, look, Trump is a criminal. You already know that. We know that he's a criminal. His whole administration, they're full of criminals. I mean, you take the head of the FBI. So now it comes to find out that he's been giving out monies to his, I guess his underlings, the people that work for him, his security force that has to guard them. Some of them have gotten bonuses up to like $8,000 put into their pocket. The American people's dollar now. And he's also paid off of to keep him like hush to keep
him quiet. Absolutely.
Right, about his alcoholism problem. He's got a big alcoholism problem, but he doesn't want to admit to it. He's in denial.
But you know what? He's not denying it anymore. Right now, there is a bourbon. I think it's a bourbon or brandy. Kash Patel's own brand that he is now selling. Kash Patel's name's right on it. FBI director. Kash Patel, like the other members of the criminal organization, is cashing in. So he's now selling alcohol. Think about this. The director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation
is selling alcohol.
One of the highest law enforcement agency in this country is selling alcohol while in office.
Hey, how about this one? With the alcohol, is selling alcohol. How about Trump is selling vapors? Did you see that? He's selling vapes.
Well, Trump is selling everything. I mean, and the foolish thing is that people will go out and attempt to purchase from Trump, like they did with the Trump phone, right? These phones, these orders were placed last year. And they were told how great these phones were, how we're in the process of developing these phones, going to have so many features. Not a single phone has been delivered. And in the fine print, it says right there, you may never get the phone. The Trump administration and his family They've made their money. It's in their pocket, in their bank account. But these people will never receive a phone. And these phones are not cheap.
You know, I wish people would look it up. I seriously mean it when I say robbing barrels. I don't know if everybody
Hmm.
knows what that is, but that's when the rich take from the poor. You know, and
Hmm.
that's what's going on here. They're stealing from us left and right and deflecting this, and they're using all types of things to deflect. Your race,
Hmm.
they're using that as a distraction. If a person is trans, that's a distraction. What is it? Women abortions, any little thing that they can find to tickle your little moral compass to get you to vote for them, they're using. And then they're putting us against each other. They're putting the blacks against the whites, and us against the Mexicans, or us against the Jew. It's constantly this division that's taking place here.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned race. And I think it's important that we have to understand that race is a social construct. This was created by Europeans in order to divide people, right?
Mm-hmm.
The idea of people being white didn't exist about 1681, right? This is relatively new to world history. But since we kind of went down that path, there's something I wanted to talk about briefly, and that is the case of Carmelo Anthony. There's been a lot of information flowing across social media, and a lot of people have a great deal of emotion invested in this case. They didn't think that Carmelo Anthony was treated fairly. They think that his sentence was way too harsh, right? And a lot of people, I think, are just getting a lot of misinformation, and I think that needs to be clarified.
Well,
In every case, right, like this, there are certain key elements, right? Um, Opportunity, motive, things like that, right, are what determine the case. So this began at a track meet in Texas. Now let's talk a little bit about Texas. Texas wanted to break away from Mexico and establish the Republic of Texas.
mm-hmm.
Why they wanted to do that? Because Davy Crockett, Sam Houston, and other folks that are considered the heroes of the Alamo were slave runners, and they were running slaves in and out of Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
Santa Anna, they said, came up and attacked for no reason. No, the truth is Santa Anna attacked the Alamo because the people in the Alamo were violating the Mexican Constitution by continuing slavery. So Texas, a state that wanted to break away so that they can continue to sell our ancestors. Texas, in terms of executions, is number one in this country. Since 1976, where they reinstated the death penalty, Texas has killed 600 people. So for those of us that look like you and I in Texas, you have to be aware of your surroundings. Know the legacy of Texas. Know the history of Texas. Know that James Byrd was dragged behind a vehicle till his body disintegrated in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
This young man, Carmelo Anthony, this is a sad situation all the way around. Carmelo Anthony made a horrible mistake. He brought a knife onto school grounds, school activities, right? You cannot do that. I don't care what you want to say about, people talk about, well, it's self-defense. It's not. I know people, again, this is a lot of emotion, a lot of I think this and I feel that sort of way. From a legal aspect, you cannot bring a weapon into a school event.
Mm-hmm.
Second, if someone is antagonizing you, the thing to do is distance yourself from them, right? Carmelo Anthony did not do that. One of the big mistakes he made, he got into an exchange, a verbal exchange with this young man, and he had his hand in his bag. The problem is people are hearing this exchange, right? They're hearing you say, if you put your hands on me, see what I'm going to do. You've got your hand in the bag. which sort of indicates you have something in that bag, potentially a weapon. Altercation starts, out comes the weapon, and he stabs this young man. Young man lost his life, and another man is young man looking at 35 years in jail. A young man who's probably never been on a proper date, right, as yet. And now for the next 35 years of his life, locked up in a cage.
I could see them hitting him up with the illegally bringing a weapon onto the property. But
Mhm.
I mean, he was also in a state where you have your stand your ground laws as well.
Stand your ground is a little bit different. First of all, you have to understand something. Stand your ground does not necessarily apply to us. I know there have been black people who, by law, stood their ground, and the law defended them. And I'll give you that case in a minute. Stand your ground is if a person is harassing you or threatening you, you don't have to give ground or retreat, right? I get that. But here's the situation. You bought the weapon. You were in their tent. A rainstorm came up, and he walked into the tent of the opposing team, right? And they told him to get out.
Mm.
If you're in a situation, hostile environment, leave. And when you talk about staying your ground, now I'll go through this very briefly. There's a man by the name of John Wilson. He moved from North Carolina to Kennesaw, Georgia. The law in Kennesaw, Georgia is that you have to own the gun. Not that you should own the gun or may own the gun. The law says you have to own the gun. John Wilson was building a house. He got into a dispute with the general contractor. Well, the result was John Wilson told the man he could not return to his property and got a restraining order preventing him from entering his property. John Wilson and his wife left to go, I don't know, shopping or whatever. He gets a call from his son and says, "Hey, Dad, somebody's on the property." He said, "Well, go see who it is." His son goes outside, and it is the contractor who's forbidden to be on the property. The contractor, who we found out later on has a drug problem, produced a knife. The son ran back in the house and called his father, said, "It's the contractor, he chased me with a knife." Father says, "Call the police." He's on his way home. He called the police. So it's 2 calls made to local police. John Wilson gets home, finds a man on his property, orders him to get off. The man advances on John Wilson with the knife. John Wilson pulls his gun that the city of Kennesaw told him he had to own, shot and killed this contractor. The police came, said, "Look, he's got a knife. He threatened you. He's on your property. You have a restraining order, no charges." 1 year later, the district attorney decided to charge John Wilson with murder. John Wilson was fighting his case and would not take a plea. Finally, John Wilson decided his wife had cancer and was rapidly deteriorating. John Wilson said, "I'll take a plea in order to get out to see my wife one last time." They released John Wilson 1 day after his wife died, never told him. Wow. And that is a perfect example of stand your ground.
Wow.
So down in North Carolina, the preacher, Pastor Barber, is still fighting that case to get John Wilson's conviction overturned because stand your ground does not work for us.
Yep. And on that note, we're going to have to pick this up on the other side because it seems like somebody's been telling me it's time to get off. You hear them? I hear them. Sound like police coming down the street.
I hear the sirens, yeah.
Did you hear them? Yeah.
I hear them.
Yeah, I guess that's time for us. That's letting us know it's our time to go. So I guess we're going to have to say peace and ashe. And just please remember, Juneteenth. I believe we celebrate that on Sunday. Is that correct? Is that the correct day for celebration? Well, June 19th. So that would have been Friday.
This Friday. Yes.
This Friday coming up. All right. Well, just make sure.
And there's one thing I'd like to add. Out at Juneteenth, I spoke to a canvasser for Paige Cognetti. And she said that she's going to reach out to the Cognetti campaign and see if they will come on to the podcast
Oh, okay.
and talk about some of the things that she's looking to do. She's actually running against Bresnahan, Senator Bresnahan.
Okay. All right, good.
So she wants to kind of introduce herself, Congressman Bresnahan.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, so she wants to kind of introduce herself to this area because she's the current mayor of Scranton. So she's not really familiar with this area or the people here. So she wants to kind of introduce herself. So that may be something we may be doing very soon.
All right, cool. Come on with this guy. What is this guy doing? Come on, man. Relax yourself. We're going. All right, people. Thank you very much for tuning in. This is Stevnson and Yates, and we are politricking. As usual, I like to say the little quote, be yourself, because everybody else is taken. And of course, I picked that up from someone else, a good friend. And I say peace. My brother says Hotep, Ashe, and we're out of here.
Welcome to the Empire One Show, where knowledge meets action. We break down barriers to financial literacy. Speak truth to power, real conversations. Oh, voices that inspire change, challenging the status quo. Tools for building wealth, taking control. Your future starts